We will send it round to everyone and share it on social media and our YouTube channel, and other bits and pieces, our technical area, which I'll talk about later. But for whatever reason that you don't want to be on the session, you can change your name and you can turn off your video so you don't appear on the recording. But without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so yeah, welcome. Thank you very much for giving up your time on this morning Surrey FA Coaches Breakfast Club. I think this is the 5th Coaches Breakfast Club we've done, and they've always been fairly well attended. Obviously, great that we are returning back to football, and these Coaches Breakfast Clubs that we've put in to kind of keep people busy on a Saturday and Sunday morning may well become redundant after this weekend. I know some of you are keen to get back over the Easter period as well, like keen and desperate to get back into football. And the purpose of today really is just to share some ideas. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of guidance and get you thinking about how you can return safely. And I know that we've probably all been bored to death with the word COVID and how we return, and we just want to get back. But we're just going to talk a little bit around about the guidance. Most of you will be aware, hopefully, that the return to football guidance, sort of phase 1, step 1 document was released earlier this week. But if you're anything like us in the office, it came very, very late, which is frustrating, and trying to get your head around it is quite complicated. Hence, we've put this together, and myself and Chloe and Chris and Keith as well from Surrey Football Coaches Association. Between us, we'll certainly be able to support you in some ideas. And Chris is going to go through some session planning ideas as well. Just some sort of, I'm not going to use the word COVID safe because the guidance has changed, so sort of normal football can resume and the competitive football. But we're going to go through some ideas, which I know many of you will be logging on the call to share. And we're going to get a bit of an idea of your concerns also. To kick things off, when we did our Coaches Breakfast Club a couple of weeks ago with the Surrey Football Coaches Association, we did this little task, and it was quite useful just to see what other people were feeling. So what I'd like you to do, again, just use the chat function, and if you're not sure, if you just hover over on the top right-hand side, and there's a little bubble with a sort of speech icon, if you just click that, it'll show up a chat function that most of you have been using. If I could just ask you to put in there what your main concerns are post-lockdown in terms of the return, we'll use that as a platform to discuss your concerns. We want to make it personalised to you. So yeah, just spend a minute, put some things in the chat function. I can't see the chat function while I'm sharing my screen, so I will just ask Chloe if you don't mind just relaying some of those in a minute's time. So I'll assume you're all busy because I can't see you. I'll assume you're all busy populating the chat function, and then Chloe, when they start coming through, just give me a shout.
Yeah, sure.
I think I'll say my main concern, the return of football, is the environment I coach at an academy or a development centre attached to an academy. We haven't returned at all, so I haven't done any coaching since March with my group. So my biggest return is I still don't have a date to return. So for those of you that are fortunate enough to be back, yeah, just share those things. And if your club, isn't returning or your team isn't returning, then please share that with us also. Sorry, Chloe.
So I was just going to say, we've just had one in, which is around not following the confusing restrictions correctly, which I completely get.
Yeah, who was that, sorry?
That was from Matt.
Yeah, Matt, I think you're right. We're going to try and cut through some of the haze and the fog a little bit, and we'll give you some sort of, I guess, that will lift the key bits out of the COVID guidance. But I appreciate it can be a little bit confusing. And I will say on that one, myself and Chloe have been through it many times, and there are lots of different interpretations. So we've been doing these calls every night this week and a couple of lunch times, and there's a few that have been thrown up that we couldn't necessarily answer. So we'll do our best. Anyone else?
Yeah, just got one from Ian around sort of lack of fitness / sharpness. My own boy has got upset and frustrated how rusty he is. I want the boys to enjoy themselves and not be worried about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Ian. And obviously we have to try and manage that as coaches. Set expectations. I'm sure Chris will talk about some of the sort of the fitness and how we can return and build that into some of our session content in terms of some light conditioning, or certainly lots of small-sided games, which is going to have double the effect in terms of lots of touches of the ball, gets rid of that rustiness a little bit quicker, hopefully. There's going to be some fitness in there, lots of 1v1s, 2v2, small-sided games. And the kids, if you're working with young players in particular, or even the sort of youth development phase, 12 to 16, the kids are just going to love getting loads of touches on the football, being social, lots of challenges and scenarios. So, yeah, definitely we'll talk about that. But I think that's going to be a common thing, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes. Simon says, what level to start? Fitness levels and concentrations levels likely to have suffered?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know what age group you coach, Simon, but I think the key thing for me is about a safe return, obviously, but also making sure that it's fun. We need to remember that, many of you have been for your coaching badges, and we talk about the FA four corner model, that is remembering, yes, it's the technical, the tactical, the physical, and people are very concerned with that. But I think because of COVID and this long layoff that we've had, or intermittent layoff, we came back a little bit, obviously, pre-Christmas, is remembering the psychosocial corners and how we can develop those. And again, I think, like I said just a second ago, lots of small-sided games and games-based activities are going to hit lots of those corners. You're going to get lots of touches of the ball if you're doing small-sided games. It's going to be physical, and there's going to be lots of fitness, but also the kids are going to be back. They're going to be enjoying it. They're going to be scoring goals, doing the things they love, sort of enjoying with their teammates. That's my personal opinion. Chris and Keith may have a slightly different opinion on that, and feel free to jump in if you want to, guys.
I totally agree. I think you go back to what we spoke about on the one we did recently. It's just staging it and pacing it. But I think a webinar I was involved in just the other night, it's also the anxiety that the coaches are feeling towards it. There's a degree of anxiety, and so try not to feel anxious about it. Just kind of almost do what you do well anyway. But it is about pace and timing and making the kids feel comfortable. As you said, it's just got to be an enjoyable environment for them.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's bearing in mind Ian's point is, put yourself in their shoes as much as you possibly can. I know none of us have ever been in this situation, but if you were returning to training, you may well feel anxious as a player or a coach. So you're putting yourself in their shoes. Do they want to arrive on the first day and run laps for 20 minutes, half an hour of the first session? They probably want to get in there with their mates. Like, they don't necessarily go to school with their mates. They may not have seen them for a long time. They want to be in there playing, having fun. In my opinion. Was there anything else, Chloe, that anyone had a concern about?
Not in the box at the minute, no.
Okay. All right. We'll move on then. Just a few things to flag up then. So, return to football guidance. Now, there are going to be different steps. So what we will do is we will share the documentation with you. It's already on our website, and you can go to the Surrey FA coronavirus support page. So I'm just going to link into that very, very quickly, just so you know what we're looking for. But in terms of our coronavirus support page, we've got all the latest guidance and contact details you need. This updated return to grassroots football, which I don't know whether you can see, because it's probably not going to share on my screen. No, we don't worry about that then for that case. But we've got the return to football guidance, government advice, and we will put the PDF document. Chloe, I might just ask if you don't mind, just pop in the PDF document for step one return. So there are numerous documents out there. For yourselves as coaches, there's a few to be aware of. So you've got the step one guidance, and it's written there on the return to grassroots football as a PDF. There is also a separate one for specific first aid queries, and there are also appendix in there for safeguarding. And like I said, the separate document for first aid, and a separate document for those of you that run the venue or a club, or if you're on a club committee, if you're a COVID officer. So you've kind of got 3 or 4 different guidance documents that you need. But for the one that I would suggest coaches use is the first aid one and our overarching master guidance. So that's the one to head to. And if you're in any doubt, then just type into your search engine Surrey FA coronavirus support, and it will take you directly to those various documentations. And what we've done is lifted out the key points and put those on our main page also. One of the things that's quite useful in that I personally found useful compared to the previous guidance is just being aware of the key steps. Now, there are 4 steps. It's important to note that these may change, can change, are likely to change, but they won't be any earlier than these key dates. So what is really important is that we follow these steps as coaches in the game. Please don't try and jump ahead, and please don't, we'll talk about in a second in terms of vaccines, etc. The percentage of people in the team that got a vaccine, I will just move a little bit quicker. It will be the 12th of April will be the next step, and you will hear from us, and we will release any further guidance documentation. So the master guidance document is titled Step 1. So it is anticipated that there will be another version of the documentation, or at least an update, whether it's a one-pager, on the 12th, on the 17th, and on the 21st. Now, when that comes out, we're not sure. Obviously, this guidance came out fairly close to the return of football, but hopefully we'll get a little bit of warning on that. So you haven't got too long before we move to step 2. So hopefully things will get easier for you. But that step guidance is really, really important. And what we've done is we've put the key things in each step that we think have been lifted out that are useful for you to know in a sort of one-pager, if you like. So if any of you are concerned, Please be clear, changing room spectators, hospitality, all that stuff at your club, that isn't going to happen. We are purely focusing on the next couple of weeks and getting the players back to training and back to matches in a safe, COVID secure manner, which we'll talk about. Spectators will not be allowed. It's going to be one parent or guardian per person, but we won't have that normal grassroots environment until probably next season. Key things to consider. Again, I've listed these out. We did this with some referees and parents in the week, so some of you may have seen those if you joined the call previously, but we're trying to make them specific to you as coaches. Now, important to always remember that the FA guidelines have been designed with Department of Culture, Media and Sport, a government agency. The government guidelines trump everything. That's the overarching guidelines, and the FA guidelines have been kind of adapted to sit underneath that. Please be very, very clear that you must follow the government guidelines at all time. And yes, like I said, they've been adapted slightly, but if you've had a negative test or you've been vaccinated, even the first dose, second dose, or lots of people on your team, that doesn't mean that you don't have to adhere to the government guidelines. Yes, you may feel ready that you're on the 21st of June guidance because everyone in the team's been tested, you've got processes in place, but that doesn't matter. You must follow the guidelines. And one thing that we tried to make really clear that I was on the call with the referees was actually looking after yourself first. If you don't feel comfortable not wearing a mask outside, then wear your mask outside. Make sure you are protected. Make sure you've got everything sorted first, because if you don't protect yourself, you're then putting yourself as coaches and also showing poor practice. So if you feel comfortable doing certain things that might be above and beyond the guidance in terms of such as wearing a face mask outside, then that's completely up to you. One really important point to consider that taking out the guidance, because a lot of people have been asking this question, is around about close contact. So obviously, if you are in close contact, we would expect you to sign up to the NHS test and trace. Your club and league should be insisting on that as well. So you should be signing up. You are not going to be contacted to say you've been in close contact with someone if you are a player. So if you are an official, if you are a player and you just interact with someone at a corner, and you're not going to be contacted to say you played in a game of football against that person, you must now self-isolate. The research tells us from a professional and grassroots perspective that you're never in contact closer than 2 meters with certain individuals. It's what we call fleeting contact. So you're not considered, in terms of NHS track and trace, a close contact. Therefore, if you play football, you are not going to be told to self-isolate if someone on the opposition it basically becomes ill. How that changes in terms of the contact you have with someone in your own team, or if you go to school with them, will be slightly different, and you'll be contacted by track and trace to confirm that. To help with that, and to make sure that you are not considered close contact, outside of the game, we need to make sure we are socially distanced at all times. So if you travel in the same car as someone from another household, or numerous people from another household, if you don't socially distance, if you do allow them into your house when they're not supposed to before and after the game, yes, then if you play with them, you are going to be considered for close contact. So don't put yourself into that situation. Don't share lifts. Don't have lots of people over to do a debriefs. Think about socially distancing at all times. So the government guidance, the law, we should point out, is there must be socially distancing at all times outside of the game. That includes coaches, substitutes, parents that have been allowed to come and watch. From a safeguarding perspective, that includes debriefs, and sort of pre-brief before warm-ups, etc. Half-time team talk, all of that does need to be socially distanced. It's only when the players are playing in the match that the government guidance doesn't necessarily have to be followed. And then we start to move to common sense best practice that we'll talk about in a second. Any questions to this point? Because I know there's been some questions posed prior to the joining the call, but is there any questions that anyone wants to unmute themselves or pop in the chat at this stage?
We've got a couple in the chat at this point, Ashley. First one, do we know when shared lifts are allowed? Which I think will probably depend on the government's map. Yeah,
so in terms of the guidance in terms of safe travel, what the guidance does is there's a sort of, I'll show you later, but there's a section on travel, and it suggests that you follow the government guidance on safe travel. Now, safe travel at the moment, in terms of government guidelines, doesn't allow lift sharing. So, but it also doesn't say when that's going to be lifted within the steps, as far as I've seen anyway. So at the moment, assume that lifts cannot be done because, again, you're not allowed to meet, forget football, you're not allowed to meet other people outside of your household unless it's outside, and there are obviously restrictions on numbers. So again, forget FA, forget football. We look at the main law, the guidance in place at the moment. So at the moment, there's no suggestion when that's going to be lifted. I'm just within the guidance and the tiers from a government perspective. I think 21st of June, obviously, all social distancing leave, so you'll definitely be able to share lifts then. I don't know whether you would be able to on the 17th of May. I'm not sure. You definitely wouldn't on the 12th of April, because, again, you can only meet people outside. But, again, that's my suggestion on having read the guidance. So certainly not before the 17th of May, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that government page is going to be the most frequently visited by coaches, I think,
Yeah.
the safe travel one.
Yeah.
The other question that's come in is, with kids, what's the situation for parents and spectators? Some will want/need that support there. So I think that's potentially just covering the one parent rule.
Yeah, I think the one parent rule exists. That's a safeguarding consideration though. So spectators are not allowed at this stage. There will be spectators allowed from the 12th of April. So there will be, again, they'll have to be socially distanced. But at the moment, it should only be a parent or guardian, and it should only be one. And really, they should only be there if there is a genuine safeguarding concern. So we're going to talk about medical first aid shortly. Now, it's suggested that for medical first aid, it's a parent or guardian that does that initial contact. So they would need to be there for that purpose. However, if parents and guardians feel that they don't feel comfortable, they want to watch from the car, that's fine. But again, there needs to be safeguarding considerations. Have you got their contact telephone number? Can you signal to them? Have you got a second coach? So the second coach could go and grab them from the car if they needed to. So it doesn't mean just because the parents are there. So if you're doing 11 aside and you've got 3 or 4 subs, it doesn't mean that you have to have 14 parents all stood on the sideline. They can sit in their car, and best practice would suggest that they do. If they can see the game from their car, then let's have them all sat in the car and they can watch from there. But yeah, one parent is allowed, and they are going to maybe need to provide some anxiety support, some mental health, some safeguarding support, like it's been said. Is there anything else, Phil? I might answer them in the next couple of slides, but
that's it for now.
Okay. I kind of just touched on it there, but that sort of pressure to return. I'm going to pose a question shortly around, do you feel comfortable returning? And we talked about it with referees as well. People saying, oh, we're sure we've got to get the players back. They all want to come back. Well, actually, how do we know that they all want to come back? Have we asked them? And consider, is it essential for you to be back? The government guide, there is still a global pandemic. There are people that are still going to need to self-isolate. Some of you will have care responsibilities for your own children, for loved ones, for friends, for family, and people just don't feel comfortable. So there is no pressure, certainly not from us. So if parents are saying to you, oh, we want to come back, we need more games, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, you don't have to do anything. If you don't feel comfortable returning, then please don't, and have that conversation. We are still under this, there's no tier restrictions, obviously. So hopefully the government guidelines are clear that there's no tiered restrictions. But again, safe travel, travel corridors, not traveling at busy times, try not to use busy routes. I know that's virtually impossible, especially if you're traveling in a convoy to an away game. You're not going to go necessarily the B roads all the way when you could just whiz around 2 junctions on the M25. I appreciate that, and it's very difficult in practice. But consider whether that travel is essential. Yes, you may have had a competitive fixture last year. Obviously, a lot of the youth leagues aren't going back in the usual format, and hopefully they will be trying to regionalise competition. But do you really need to organise a friendly when you live in Croydon and you're travelling all the way down to Waverley or almost to Heathrow where the Surrey border finishes? Is that essential just because you want a competitive game? I would consider that probably not, and really start to think about the distances that you're willing to travel. And make contact with your opposition. The guidelines are very clear, the FA guidelines. There does need to be a system in place at every single venue. So when you're organising fixtures, the things that you would probably not have thought about previously would be things like, who is the COVID officer at that site? Have the site and the club shared a risk assessment or COVID-specific risk assessment with you? Have you even asked for those things? Try not to get too bogged down and exchanging WhatsApp messages with the opposition coach and saying, great, 9 o'clock start, we'll be there, fantastic, looking forward to the game. That's fine. But actually, we need to start to think about the other things, because if you don't predict yourself, if you haven't identified who the COVID officer is, what's the process, what route are we coming around, are there special considerations? Because you don't want to turn up and suddenly find you're in the wrong place, or the car park's closed and you've got to use a separate entrance, all those sorts of things. So please do some due diligence before you travel, and make sure you have those things, because other coaches are within their right to ask you, who's your COVID officer? What's your restrictions? Is there a one-way system? Is there different parking? Have we got this? Where are the toilets? Are they going to be open? Those questions will be posed to you and should be posed to you. Obviously, changing rooms are going to be closed. Toilets will be open. Changing rooms are available where they are available, I should say, but only in certain circumstances. So the guidance suggests that those with a disability or accessibility needs, in case of an emergency in a serious situation, and someone had to be in that changing room, then again, that is okay. But please plan accordingly. Are you prepared? Have you got everything out? Have your players, are they turning up dressed in their kit? Has anyone told them that the change rooms are going to be closed? Because if they haven't, and you get 12 players turn up who are in their tracksuit but haven't got changed yet, then we don't want 12 potential 9-year-olds getting changed in the middle of a rainy April park in full view of everyone. So have you communicated the fact that that's closed? Please don't make assumptions that people are going to be aware of that. Now, the next two are relatively, first aid guidance is your responsibility. Now, the first aid guidance is clear what should be happening, but in reality, in the practicalities, if there is a serious injury, you will be expected to breach COVID social distancing guidance because it is your responsibility. If you have a designated first aider, or you have a parent or guardian who is a paramedic, a doctor, whatever that might be, obviously in an extreme situation, an emergency situation, you and that person may step in, but you will have to breach guidance. What we are asking you to do is prepare for that eventuality by having checked your first aid kit, because some of us stick it in the back of the car, we leave it, and stuff expires. That's just a normal pre-COVID time. So please check, is everything in date? Have you got extra gloves? Have you got an additional face mask, rather than just the one that you might have that's got pretty flowers and pictures of dragons or whatever it is on it? Have you got something that's going to be appropriate for that situation if it occurs? Please make sure, speak to your club. If you don't want to fork out for loads of extra PPE, then please come to Surrey FA and we can point you in the direction of what we think is the best ones. We can't pay for it for you. Speak to your club and say, right, I need additional PPE for my first aid kit. It's their responsibility to provide that. So please let them know. And in terms of reporting incidents, I just want to touch on this because I think it's really important. We've had an awful lot of reports from people over the past few weeks, and I've seen it myself in a local park and had to report something in terms of breaches. Now, if people are blatantly breaching the rules and it's clear and obvious, yes, we do want to know about those things, but it's important to remember that that is a breach of the law. That is not a breach of footballing codes of conduct. Like, yes, we would expect you within the guidance to follow those, but that's a breach of sort of common law in this country, or short-term law that have been brought in. So if you have severe concerns to that nature, where there's an immediate danger, there's hundreds of people having a party in the clubhouse, report that to the police and then just let us know after. If we are talking about, someone spitting, or there's people aren't socially distanced at a team talk, just consider, we don't want to be flooded with stuff that we can't really deal with. So we will always remind people, and where we hear about instances, we will always nudge people, but we can't punish them in terms of discipline. So COVID breaches are not part of discipline at Surrey FA. We don't have the guidance and regulation for that. We're not going to punish people or fine people. We don't have the power to do that, and that simply will not happen. So if you're reporting it to us, please note that by reporting it to us, all we can do is highlight and remind people. And we can be very severe. If there are lots of breaches and severe breaches, then the leagues can remove fixtures, etc. But just please be wary of doing that for every single little thing. And you should point out as well that there will be a COVID officer designated at every single venue. So report it to the COVID officer. That's their job. That's part of their role, is to deal with incidences and effectively communicate and action anything from that. Okay, any questions before I move on? I'm going to pose a couple of questions, and then we're going to get into the sort of probably slightly more fun stuff, which is going to be Chris and I'm sure Keith and myself and Chloe maybe offering our opinions on some session planning, and I know Chris is going to share some bits and pieces. But any questions, things to consider?
Got a couple in the chat box. John wants to know, is reconfirmation of explicit consent required from parents?
It's a good point. I would always say, and one of the questions I'm going to pose in a minute is, have you made it clear that everyone feels comfortable to return? There is certainly no harm. Obviously, your club will have got the parents to sign a code of conduct, risk assessment guidance, or certainly should have done back at the start of the season or at the start of every season. They should be getting consent from parents. There's certainly no harm, John, in sending something around, drafting something up. You can get our safeguarding teams to look at it in terms of can we get consent. I don't think you don't need to do that, because you would have already done that at the start of the season, but it might be quite good from best practice to say, hi guys, is everyone feeling comfortable? What are your main concerns? Kind of put these sort of questions, share some guidance, and maybe get them to fill out a form and just tick the box, say, yeah, I'm happy. I've read the risk assessment. I've read the COVID declaration. I'm happy with that. So for example, on our referee academy, which is where we send referees to local academies, Chelsea, Fulham, etc., Crystal Palace and others, we have like an under 18 safeguarding document. So what we do is we send out the COVID risk assessment. for the venue and our own risk assessments. We send out safeguarding and other bits and pieces. And pre-lock or post-lockdown, we've asked everyone to reconfirm their consent and said, have you read the declaration? Have you read the new COVID guidance? Are you happy with what we've produced for you? And then we've asked them to do consent again. And that's, it's slightly different because it's referees in an environment that we control. But I don't see any harm in that, John. It's best practice. But speak to our safeguarding team if you're in any doubt.
Fab. Nick says, sorry, might be behind. Nick says, is there a recommended process if there is a breach or people don't feel COVID safe? Just cancel and leave? ?
If you don't feel safe in an environment because someone's breaking the law, for me, it's the same as anything else. If someone was doing something in an environment and they were breaking the law or doing something that endangered me or my players, I'd leave. 100%. Practically and in reality, trying to say to 14 parents, we're off, and 14 under 9s, under whatever, say we don't feel safe, we're going, you want to have a stepped approach. So my suggestion would be, yes, you may want to leave, but that would be a last resort. Are you staying socially distant and safe, first and foremost? Have you alerted the COVID officer? Let's say you're at an away venue or even a home venue. Speak to the COVID officer. You should have their phone number in your phone. You should have the welfare officer's number in your phone. That's just best practice anyway. Contact them and have that stepped approach. Contact the COVID officer. Guys, we think you're in breach here. We're not feeling comfortable. You can see that we're following the guidance. Our COVID officer is going to come over and have a chat with you. Can we just please make sure that we get in line quickly? Otherwise, the threat is we may stop the game. And if they continue to breach, then obviously, depending on the severity of the breach, you could contact the police if you really wanted to. And then, you could leave. Again, that's your decision, but I would always do it as a stepped approach. What we don't, and also think about the severity. So if the opposition aren't maybe full 2 meters, they're a meter apart in their team debrief, are you then just going to leave? Maybe not. So consider the severity, the danger, who's involved, and have a stepped approach. But certainly, if you don't feel comfortable, remove yourself from that situation. And we've said the same to the referees as well.
Fab. The last one in the chat box at the minute is from Paul, who says WFA is keeping the no more than 30 guidance. What's the FA position on that?
Well, so if you think about, in terms of social distancing, every child under 18, that is, so under 18 are considered to be children. Those children are allowed to have and we're not going to call them spectators because they're really only there for a safeguarding purpose. That's the purpose they're serving. They don't have to be pitch side. They can sit in the cars, like we said, or be away from the pitch. If they're under 18, someone should come with them. Obviously, if you've got 11 aside and say that you've got a squad of 14, we wouldn't be expecting you to be taking massive squads to rotate because then you have implications for numbers and distancing, etc. But if you've got 2 sets of teams, they're both allowed to have 1 parent each in theory. Then they have to be socially distanced. So can you have 1 team on one side of the pitch, 1 team on the other? Can some people sit in the car if they're happy to do so? Are there people that don't want to watch the game? Fine, sit in the car. I've got your contact details. I can contact you if I need to. So my understanding is you've got to follow that guidance, which would be every child can, if they want to, have a parent there from a safeguarding point of view. But then it's the club's responsibility to make sure those people are spread out. So are they 2 meter distance? Are they on separate sides of the pitch? So that's the challenge, I would say. And that's why I'd ask you to think about how many people do you want to pick in your squad as well? How do you rotate that to minimise the numbers? But the guidance allows you to have that many people, which would breach the over 30. Okay, just a couple of things before we start to delve into some session planning. Sorry, Chloe, is there anything else?
No, I think someone's typing, but we'll pick that up at the next pause.
Okay, so in terms of your club's plan, I'm going to pose 2 slides before we move on. And those 2 slides are going to pose a couple of questions. Now, if these questions you can't answer, and this is kind of why I've deliberately done it, you need to take action. And if you've got a training session tomorrow, start to think about, if I don't know the answers to these questions, then should I be training tomorrow? And the answer would most certainly be no. So please consider, and I fully appreciate, by the way, because we only got this guidance on, I think, Wednesday morning, that you may not have seen these documentation, but your club should be completing that and sending this to you in terms of risk assessments. So risk assessment. There is a COVID-specific risk assessment. You should have seen that. Your club should have seen that. That comes out as part of the guidance, and I would direct you to the government website, the Surrey FA website, and stuff in the chat box that we're going to post shortly, or if we haven't done so already. Do you need to make changes and adaptations? Is the venue you're using, so some of you may use our Meadowbank HQ, there will be a one-way system in there. You should have been contacted about that previously, and you should be able to ring the venue and say, what's the process? Is there space in the car park? Is it going to be one space closed, like it is at Meadowbank, for example? Those things you need to be aware of and plan in it accordingly. If you don't know who your COVID officer is at your club, then please find out, and please make sure their details are in your phone as long as you're a welfare officer. That is actually part of our safeguarding visits that we have done in the past. We will be asking people we did in the past who the welfare officer is. Do you have their contact details in your phone? That needs to now be, do you know who your COVID officer is and have you got their contact details? Do you know what their role is, what they're doing? If they're going to be on holiday or whatever, is it someone else stepping into that? So please, if you don't know the answers to those questions, find out very quickly. And the other thing to look back to is, does everyone feel comfortable? Do you feel comfortable? Have you asked that question, or have you just assumed that everyone wants to return? So you may notice that you may have a WhatsApp group with 15 parents in it. Have every single one of them explicitly said, we feel comfortable? Is it worth maybe just a little nudge, maybe a phone call to a couple of people that haven't responded to say, how are you guys feeling? Is it worth maybe quickly producing a couple of questions on a form and pinging it out to parents and saying, let's just answer these questions anonymously to see how you feel comfortable? Only going to take you 5-10 minutes to draw that up, or just post a couple of questions in the WhatsApp and say, if you don't feel comfortable, can you just, WhatsApp me or give me a ring privately to discuss and see how we can support you to reduce anxiety. Have those conversations nice and early, because you don't want to get a couple of weeks in and someone says, well, I felt really pressured to return because you kept saying that you were short at the weekend and that we had to get return. Well, firstly, we don't need to return. Not everyone feels comfortable. If you don't have enough players to make up the numbers, then do you need to put pressure on people? I would suggest you don't need to in this situation. Okay, I think any other questions, and then we will move on and I'll let Chris do his bit.
Yeah, got one from Rashan. So what about double headers? Wouldn't it be a bit tiring with a small squad to do those games? Should it be best to incorporate more breaks or maybe something else?
Now, I don't know. In my former role a year ago, I used to be the football services manager at Surrey FA, and double headers was a bit of a something of a grey area, I would say. My question back to you would be, have double headers been planned? So why would there be a need for a double header? Because I think most of the youth leagues have curtailed their season, and I may be wrong there, I don't know that for certain, but most were just going to focus on cup competitions, allowing clubs to play friendlies. Some leagues have done like little Champions League formats where they're having sort of group phases. So I don't know whether there would be a need for a double header, because we're not trying to cram league fixtures in. And double headers are something that I wouldn't recommend anyway, even pre-COVID. I don't know whether Rashan's going to come back to say that there are double headers. If your league has organised that, then again, do you need to do that? And is that the right thing to do? Maybe not. Because double headers will likely last longer as well. You might play shorter formats, but you're probably going to end up being at that venue longer, so you're going to be in close contact for longer. Is that a necessary risk? I'd suggest probably not.
Rashan's come back with, thank you, that's fine. Was just wondering, as an adult league has done one, I think I'm due to play some potentially as well, which is fun.
I just, from my perspective, is it really strictly necessary? Again, like I said, most are not doing. I would contact your league to see. That's just my personal opinion, though. I should caveat that by saying Surrey FA has not released a message to say double headers shouldn't be allowed. But double headers on their own can sometimes be not a cause for concern, but you just want to keep the same formats ideally. Okay, I think the questions that were posed in the group to us before at the point of booking have been answered as well. And at this stage, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to ask Chris to come in. And like I said, we'll do something a little bit more fun, which will probably be talking about session planning, which, like I said, most of you will probably want to be involved in. So, Chris, I think you can share your screen if you can. And there you go. Okay, I can see that. So I'll let Chris take you through the next however long, 10, 15, 20 minutes. If you've got any questions, keep them coming in the chat box. Me and Chloe will pose them to Chris with his vast experience. And we've also got Keith on the call. I think between Keith and Chris, I wouldn't want to guess how many years experience and the quality of qualifications and interactions they've had with players. So They are the experts in this area. But and we're going to talk about some things in terms of returning to COVID and how that might be supported. Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Jump in with anything, any questions, anything, just take yourself off mute, shout them out. Keith, join in as well, just anything. So first things first for me, I'll just go through like a checklist that we're using currently. So first thing, find out a little bit about the family. I normally shout at the end of a session, oh, where's your dad, where's your mum? That might not be the right way to do it this time. It might be who's picking you up. So just little things like that, because I have had a parent died a few weeks ago of COVID, so it's just being aware of those types of stuff. We have 3 buckets. So the way COVID, or the way that it's been described to us as the way COVID is killed is, or the way that the virus is killed is, there's an outer layer which the soapy water gets rid of the outer layer, but it's the disinfectant that kills the actual virus. But the only way to get that is to get the washing up liquid on it first. So a bucket of soapy water, chuck your footballs in there, cones in there, get them soapy first, then put them in clean water, then take them out of there, put them in the disinfectant, and now we can use them on the pitch because they're safe. And then at the end of the session, everything gets picked up, back into the soapy water, clean water, disinfectant, and I know I'm ready for the next session. So that's my first thing. When we're cleaning any equipment, when we're siding players in and out, that sort of stuff, gloves on, because there's a lot of contact, even if it's fist bumps, anything, there's still a lot of contact. Keep a register of everybody, whether it's players, parents, anybody dropping off, picking up, that sort of stuff, just so that if there is an incident, if there is somebody that's dropped with it, at least you know who was there and why, and that sort of stuff. Cleaning door handles, change rooms. Most venues would have done that for you, so most venues will clean it before you use it. But if you're in it at 7 o'clock at night and there's been 3 groups on before you, might be worth giving the handles a wipe and that sort of stuff. We have a spray with disinfectant and stuff in, and we just spray the door handles, goalposts, stuff like that before we start. We use rather than having one square with all the drink bottles and stuff in, we now put cones 2 meters apart. Everybody puts their bags as they come in. There's your cone. Have some hand sanitizer. Go put your bag down, and then come and join in so that everybody's 2 meters apart. That sort of stuff, just to get everybody ready. Bibs, only used once, never changed. So never take a bib off of this kid, give it to another kid. So, and at the end of every session, all the bibs are washed. As Ashley's already pointed out, 1 parent allowed for each player under 18. Normally, the venues are now saying don't come in more than 5 minutes before. So you've got a chance for one group to leave before the next group comes in. And a one-way system is normally in place. So I'll send that over to Ashley, mix and match and pick the pieces that are good for you and the bits that aren't, chuck away. First session for me, and we'll grab Keith for you as well in a minute. For me, warm up, a very slow, longer warm up. They haven't done anything for a long time. So the dynamic stretches start really low level and gradually build the intensity over the warm up. Don't make them stretch massively early on, build that in. From talking in Zoom calls to our players and our parents, there were 2 things that stood out. So when we spoke to our players about what were their concerns, what did they want, what didn't they want, that sort of stuff, there were 2 concerns. And bizarrely, one of them was, I don't want people to see my hair, I haven't had my hair cut. And that was players going, I'm really concerned about that. Can I wear a hat? That sort of stuff. So they were more concerned about social and stuff than anything else. And they couldn't wait to get back to chat to their mates that they haven't seen or spoken to for a very long time. So my thoughts would be 6-minute games, something like that, 1-minute drink break, change teams, let them have a 2-minute chat, obviously social distance, but let them have a 2-minute chat and then repeat the game again. So you just play games. I would not, me personally, I would not be concerned about fitness in the beginning. I really wouldn't. I would be concerned about them having fun, enjoying it, mixing socially, getting all that anxiety out of the way, by just letting them have some fun. Whether that's 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, whether it builds up into a 5v5, 6v6, but I would just be playing lots of games, loads and loads of games. And as a progression, this might be something that's a bit of fun for the players at the end. So you put a whiteboard up, you put a noughts and crosses board on it. So one might be, box number 1 might be a successful dribble. Number 2 might be if you've made somebody shot on target for 3, anything like that. Let the kids play, and as they achieve one of those, so if they've saved a shot, they run over and put a nought or a cross in number 6, and they just keep going like this. It's a way of getting the kids to just have a bit of fun, and you can select what ones they have and that sort of stuff. So for me, it would be something like that. Loads of games and a noughts and crosses game. And it might be, if you really wanted to do something coaching wise, it might be a grid practice where everybody's got a grid of their own. And you would have something like, so can I take it out of my square with a first touch? Can I play it into a square that's got nobody in it? Can I, receive a pass in a square rather than play it to feet? Any of those types of stuff that just get them active again and get them playing. They're not tackling each other. You've got, teams of 3, teams of 4, whatever it would be. And just loads of little practices like this that would just get them back into playing. And I'll share these couple of session plans, and I'll share these session plans with you and go through it. But any questions from you, anything from you, or Keith, any thoughts, views?
The grid sessions work really well. We use those at the foundation a lot. I think if you think about it, the grid sessions do maintain a certain element of social distancing automatically, as well as the awareness it creates. Obviously, ideally, if you've got the spot discs rather than the plastic discs. But yeah, any type of those grid sessions are excellent.
Anybody else? Any thoughts, questions, anything that anyone wants to go through?
We've just had Matt post in the chat box, Chris, saying, I coach under 9s. Would a 60-minute training session be sufficient? I was planning an hour and a half.
Well, first session back, I would probably do an hour. I probably would for the first ones back. They got to build it back up. And I think the social side of it is more important than the fitness side right now. The fitness side will come in time, and playing games, 3v3, 4v4 type games are highly physical anyway. So I would say an hour first couple of weeks.
If you've got an hour and a half, sorry to butt in, if you've got an hour and a half available, Matt, you could use periods of that, sit them around socially distanced, just sit them down and ask them what they've been up to, how they've been doing, is there anything they want to talk about with the group? What would they like to do? Use it in another way rather than making them run around, etc.
Anybody else?
No more questions coming up on the chat, Chris. Nothing else coming up.
Okay. I'll email these over to Ashley, and then feel free to mix and match and pick the bits you like out of it. But if there is anything, give me a shout.
Thanks, Chris. Just going to wait sure there's no other queries. And I think one thing I would say is, obviously Chris has given a great sort of idea of what could be used. I think as well, there's so much content out there on the internet and the various platforms that you can find. So the FA Boot Room, you've got a coaching manual, there's Twitter, there's YouTube and Facebook and all these sorts of things. There is so much content, but just before you start to steal content, just have a think, link it back to the things Chris has said and that we've talked about tonight. That's a great session. Is that completely necessary for my players? Does that work for my players? Is there a way I can make it COVID secure? Yes, we talked about fleeting contacts. We want small-sided games, and we don't want to I think the previous lockdown, it was really restricted. Like the suggestion was it was like really drill based, like spread out. Everyone had to be 2 meters apart. You were passing balls, etc. That is less now. So you've got a bit more freedom as coaches. But just when you're taking stuff off the internet and session planning and pinching other people, and it's really good to pinch ideas, you know, we all do it. Just consider, how can I make that a bit COVID secure? How can I link the psychological, social corners that we just talked about and Chris mentioned, how those are really important. Just try and think about and link it back to those all the time. Okay, let me just finish. I'm just going to share my screen again. And just to point you in the right direction of a few more things that are coming up in the next few days and weeks. So some of you may be aware that we have released, and hopefully you'll be aware, because we've tried to make as big a thing as possible, that we've got some new areas dedicated to certain, depending on how you are involved in the game of football. So we've got the fifth official for referees, we've got the technical area for coaches, and we've got the clubhouse for people that work on committees, administrators, volunteers, parents, etc., where you can access dedicated content. So that might be blog posts, videos. This recording will be saved on the technical area. So feel free to dip into these areas. Just go onto our website again, a quick Google search of the Surrey FA technical area. These are really bespoke, and we're trying to get as much content on there and relevant content for you. And everything will link to this COVID week of action that we've had, this return to football series that you're part of. And all of the recordings and the content and things like Chris's session planning, we will share in this instance on the technical area. So please dive into that as best possible. And a few other things that are coming up. I can't believe that we're screeching towards April pretty quickly. On our last day of March, we have got a return to football and beyond. Now, this is being run in partnership with Working with Parents in Sport. We had three really successful sessions with them back in sort of October, November time, really well attended. We had sort of 40, 50 people paying for those. So we decided to make this one completely free, and we're going to open it out to anyone who is a parent in sport. Now, obviously, it's aimed at parents traditionally. Many of you will coach your own children. So please, if you're a coach and you coach your own child, or you're a parent and your son or daughter plays in other sports, please come and join us on Wednesday night. It's completely free to attend. We'll send around the link to that. It's all on social media. It will be on the Clubhouse page in the technical area, and you can access that in our events pages. So our workshop, completely free, like I said, we kick off at 7 o'clock, and it's just a guide specifically for parents to support their son or daughter or people that they care for return to sport and overcome some of the challenge potentially, or actually just raise some of the challenges that people might not be aware of. I'll maybe let Keith talk a little bit more about this, and Chris, in fact, because Keith and Chris, you can join the Surrey Football Coaches Association on Friday night. They are, and I've not taken the title perfectly, but a return to football readiness webinar is kind of what I'm going to summarize it as. It may have an official title, so I apologize. But Chris, Keith, do you want to just give a quick overview of how people can book and what to expect on Friday night?
We've also got Paul Mady on the call, who's one of the committee members. He might be clearer on that, but on the title and stuff. But Chris, which I'm really chuffed about, has become what we call one of our affiliate members now, affiliate experts. We've got a number that we're going to be utilising to deliver stuff. So this one is based on two elements, similar to the stuff we've just been discussing, and also the mental health stuff, which links in with everything else we've got there. So we've got Zach Rafiq from Orange Ball. I think he's delivering as well as one of our guest speakers.
Yes, he is.
So, and again, you know, please get the message out there, guys. It's a free membership. We're linked in very heavily, partnership-wise, with the County FA and other organisations. So if you're not already a member, please jump on board. You can join this anyway. But yeah, please come and join us. Chris, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Listen, the association's been going a really, really long time. I've gone to many events with the association for the last 20 years, and you always come away with a little golden nugget of something that you've gained from it. So, and they're revamping everything now. It's really a good time to get involved.
Yeah, definitely echo those thoughts, and you know there will be some similar things that we talked about today on that. So it's just another opportunity to refresh and remind yourselves. Some of you may also have had some training sessions, so you may be able to watch that webinar on Friday. I think it starts at 6 o'clock, with a slightly different viewpoint because you've been there and done it and had a few days experience of returning to coaching. So just refresher, get back in there ready for next weekend if you've got something over the Easter weekend. Moving forward then, so in April we have 2 mental health first aid sessions. The dates are still to be confirmed, but I'm hopeful we're going to get those out next week or the week after. So hopefully 3rd, 4th week in April, we'll be doing a mental health first aid session. Now we have an adult and a youth mental health first aid. It's something you may not have considered, but I think COVID and the anxieties and the social pressures and the mental health concerns that people have, which are going to be huge over the next few years in terms of COVID, it's going to be a long-term thing. And I think we at Surrey FA are really important to put mental health on the agenda. So these are recognised qualifications. They're run by Mental Health First Aid England. So you have qualified tutors. There will be a half-day option. So we're going to run them, one of them in the evening. One of the sessions will also be a 2-day workshop. So if you really want to delve a little bit deeper and get a mental health first aid qualification recognised nationally, then we will be putting that out there, and they will be heavily subsidised. So Surrey FA will be discounting these sections specifically for coaches, referees and grassroots volunteers. So if you want to get involved and you have a role as a coach, a referee, or in one of those volunteer areas, then you will be liable to a discount. It's already heavily discounted. We're working with a partner to get the cost down, and we will be doing that. So it'll be on a first come, first served basis. Like I said, flexible options. So there'll be an evening session. There will then be a 2-day workshop, and potentially we're going to break that 2-day workshop into 4 evenings or 4 weekend afternoons or whatever it might be, try and make it easier for you to access. So recognised qualification is coming up, and then on 10th of May that kicks off Mental Health Awareness Week. Again, there'll be a huge week of action from our perspective, and we have some partners. We've partnered with some mental health organisations. There will be a live Q&A and some pre-recorded content for you to engage with. So if you are someone as a coach or in any role who has suffered or is suffering with mental health, then these might be events that you might want to get involved with. But even if you have never experienced a sort of severe mental health episode or a diagnosed mental health episode, we all have mental health, and it's really important that we engage with that. Even if it's not for you, even if it's for your family or the people that you coach, then there's some great touch points there in the next couple of months to get involved with. So further information will be sent out, and as soon as we've got some dates, you'll hear about that through our e-zine. So if you're not part of our e-zine in the booking process, you would have had a chance to sign up. But if you selected no, or you want to hear about these things, then just drop us a message separately. Just email education@surreyfa.com, and we'll make sure that you get alerted to those. But I think, quick watch check, we're 5 minutes to finish before 10. So I appreciate your time this morning. I know some of you are eager to get back out and give up your mornings and your afternoons on weekends, but I really appreciate you getting involved. Lots of stuff for you to consider and get thinking about. But if not, there's no further questions. Just have a quick check in the chat function. We'll call it a day there, and we
Ashley,
will. Yes. Sorry, I can't see who that is.
Sorry, it's Paul Mady. Paul Mady, yeah.
Paul.
Can I do a very, very quick plug for SFA's Walking Football on Tuesday morning for anyone who wants to go and stretch their legs very gently between 10:30 and 11:30 at Meadowbank. It's and it'll probably be free if you've never been before. You can book up on the Surrey FA website under Just Play.
Fantastic. All right, well, there's an opportunity for those of you that want to ease back into some exercise. Certainly. And if anyone else has got anything else that they want to, if you want to get back into football and you've got concerns, just let us know and we can signpost you to those various places. Okay. Thank you very much for your time this morning, everyone. Enjoy what's left of the day. It's not particularly sunny outside, but you can go and do some session planning, I'm sure, inspired, and we'll speak to you all very soon.
You can email out Chris's stuff to us, Ashley, or put a link.
I certainly am. I will send out a follow-up, and then this recording will be saved on our website anyway, so you can have it for reference. But yeah, everything will be sent out to you, and I'm sure Chris will share that.